Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scot McKay.
How's it going, gentlemen? Welcome to yet another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. As always, I am your host, Scot McKay. You can find me on social media, pretty much every platform you can think of nowadays by searching my name, SCOTMCKAY. If you haven't joined the Facebook group yet, gentlemen, go get you some. We have a good group of guys there. We're having a lot of fun. That's the Mountaintop Summit on Facebook. And of course, the website, as always, is mountaintoppodcast.com. Today, I have with me a returning guest. His name is Jim Wolfe. He is a great guy. A lot like me, he talks in very plain English about what works with women. He's all about building relationships with the right woman instead of, say, notching your bedpost and just getting laid for the sake of it. I know some of you guys like to get laid for the sake of it, but Jim, like me, is in a relationship with a wonderful woman who adores him. So today what we're going to talk about is the idea of not getting sick of the same woman. How can you be in a quote-unquote monogamous relationship and still be psyched to be there 3 weeks later, a month later, 6 months later, 6 years later, 60 years later, or in the case of my parents, 61 years as of about a week and a half ago as we're recording this. So all the way from Yerevan, Armenia, which is where he happens to live right now, Jim Wolfe, welcome back, man.
Hey, thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. Good to be back with you.
Hey, you know what? I think you're probably one of the few people I know other than myself who's even been to Yerevan, Armenia, at least here in the States, and you live there. What's life like there these days?
It's incredible. It was a good place to be during COVID. And my girlfriend's she was doing her master's degree here at the American University. So it's been a very interesting experience. It's a cool kind of former Soviet city. So it's been an interesting time to live here. And I'm glad that I did. It gave me a little new perspective on things.
The food is great and the people are extremely friendly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the women are gorgeous. You and I were joking before we started this actual recording that every woman in Armenia looks like Catherine Zeta-Jones. And your girlfriend is actually Armenian, so I'm sure
that's
she's
right.
Just gorgeous.
Well, and I mean, like Kim Kardashian, anyone with the last name Yan is probably Ian. Armenian background. So there you go.
Yossarian from Catch-22. All Armenians.
There you go.
Yeah, right. Fantastic. So today we're going to indeed put our money where our mouth is because both you and I are in solid long-term relationships. I really do think a lot of guys get scared that if they commit to one woman, that sounds real final to them. You know what I mean? What if I really do feel buried when I'm married? What if I'm with a woman and, I start getting itchy for some strange before I know it? What do you think is the secret that men know who don't feel that and who successfully stay psyched about their wife or long-term girlfriend for a long time? I know that's a big, hefty question to throw on the table first, but it's a real good one, isn't it? Go for it. Absolutely.
We could probably write a book about it, but
why don't we do that?
Yeah, we should actually. Yeah. To be brief, I think there's a few really main things that come into play here. First, from the very beginning, I think it's really important to approach the women you're most attracted to. Now, a woman doesn't have to be a supermodel or something like that for you to be happy with her long term. She just has to be attractive enough to you. But I think this actually starts with that fear of approaching in the very beginning. If you actually approach women that you are genuinely super attracted to in the first place, it's going to be less likely that you'll be less attracted to them later. I mean, that makes sense to you, right?
Of course it does. Of course it does. Continue.
So that's the first thing. Approach the women that make you nervous, because later on you're going to regret it if you don't. And that's a big part of it, actually, that we shouldn't skip. And then after that, I think that on the positive side, you have to look for specific qualities in a woman that have actually shown with a lot of studies that allow you to have a satisfying relationship over a long time. So if you're going to be with someone for 25 or 50 years, there are specific characteristics you can look for that have been shown to make you satisfied over the long term. And if they're not there, you won't be satisfied. That's the way it is. So, for example, a woman has to be a giver versus a taker. Because even if she's in love with you and you're in love with her and everything is cool, if she just doesn't have it in her mind that she should do something for someone else at any point, and we're not trying to take advantage of someone or get something for free here, it's just it should be kind of a more equal relationship where you're both giving something to it. And if you find a woman who's a giver, then you're going to be more satisfied over the long term than someone who never thinks about you at all or wanting to do something for you. And so she's not having to do everything for you. It's just like, it's nicer to be with someone who thinks about doing something for you sometimes. And I think a lot of women out there don't have this quality, and you can't be happy with them over the long term. And then the second part of that is someone who is what they call agreeable. And agreeable is basically just the kind of social science word for like having a good attitude, not wanting to fight. There's some people out there that just kind of want to have conflict and they enjoy it, or they at least don't want to live without it. They like to start fights. They want to fight you. They want to argue with you. And if you're with a woman like that, who's either stubborn and hard-headed, she wants to argue with you, she doesn't want to resolve things with you calmly, and she's always kind of picking at you or whatever, obviously you're going to lose interest in her over time. That's one of the few things that can actually lower men's interests. So let's say you do ask out that super attractive woman that you really genuinely are attracted to in the first place. If she's like that over time, you are eventually going to lose interest in her. So if you find a woman who you are genuinely super attracted to off the bat, and she has a kind of flexible, positive, agreeable attitude where she wants to resolve things with you calmly most of the time, she's not trying to get your goat all the time. I mean, maybe she kind of playfully tests you a little bit like we all do with our friends. But beyond that, if she's the kind of person who just has a negative attitude or she's not agreeable in general, you're going to lose interest in her over time. That's just natural. So I think choosing a good woman who has those qualities is the second biggest key to that. So beyond her looks, she should also have those qualities, or you're going to start finding other women attractive. And of course, I mean, like, you know, Scott, like we're always going to find other people attractive, but whether you're going to think about that in a certain way or not is based on your attraction level to your girlfriend or wife and her personality.
Well, you know, there's so much to talk about there because basically, my good man, you just hit it out of the park. It all starts with the right woman. I mean, you can't take a bad choice and turn it into a good one over the course of 6 months or a year or 60 years. It's a huge myth that I can learn to fall in love with this person. I can learn to be attracted to this person. Yeah. And man, that nightmarish concept is such a wonderful jumping off point to riff on just about everything you talked about. First of all these drama seekers who just want to tear each other apart, I just let them all hang out with each other on political Twitter, Jim. I just let them stew in their own juice over there.
They do live there a lot.
I know. Two of the factors you just mentioned that are absolutely key to being in a wonderful relationship by design were generosity, being a giver, not a taker, and also this idea of being agreeable, you know, having a positive attitude. And I don't think it's a coincidence at all, Jim, that I've been telling my guys for years that two of the major pillars of a great relationship are optimism, right? Which is a lot like being agreeable. You know, you're expecting the best out of a situation. So I think optimistic people tend to be more agreeable instead of being contentious, because people who are pessimistic are expecting the worst. So they tend to be the blamers and the people who are just accusatory. And of course, this generosity. If two people are trying to take from each other, well, then how is that a partnership? Those are two people trying to rip each other off for the next however long they can stand it. But when people are generous with each other, then, you know, the benefits are more than the sum of their individual parts. And let me explain. Like, for example, if I want something from my wife and she gives it to me because I demanded it of her and she's a giver and I feel like I've won that power struggle or whatever because I won something, I got her to concede something, make a concession to me. The best I can hope for is what I asked for. You see? I mean, it's 1 + 1 = 1. If she's a giver, if I'm a giver, not only will I get all of the things that will help make for a satisfying relationship on my part, she'll go above and beyond and do wonderful things for me or contribute to my life in ways I don't even expect, let alone ever even thought to ask for. And if I'm doing that for her also, the end result is 1 + 1 = 4 or 5 or 20 or 100, like I say all the time around here. So again, it's not coincidence. You and I both understand how this works, and we're just spitting truth right now. You said something very, very interesting way back at the beginning that I thought was extremely quotable. Ask out the women who make you nervous. Now, see, here's the thing. I've spoken to men over the years, Jim, who have never found the woman they want because they were too scared to talk to them. They had approach anxiety. They feared rejection. And then they wake up when they're 40, 50, or 70 and go, I don't understand what I was afraid of, because having lived my life this long without any decent women in it, it's turning out to be a hell of a lot more scary than anything that could have resulted from me talking to them. And that is such a poignant viewpoint. And it's one that I would love to save a whole lot of younger guys the trouble of having to endure later. Indeed, when you see a woman who's attractive to you, you're supposed to get butterflies. You're supposed to be hopeful. There has to be some risk reward involved. Now, the truth of the matter is she's probably not seeing your first conversation with her as a competition. That's how we as guys are wired. But if you're too chicken to even talk to her, then you're not going to meet her. And you know what? We tell ourselves a story. We develop this storyline, Jim, where, other guys deserve a hot, sexy chick like the one I would be attracted to. I should settle. I don't deserve a pretty woman. I deserve a woman who maybe is, a yes instead of a no. But I can't expect to have a woman who I'm really attracted to. And meanwhile, our equally miserable friends and family members are telling us, hey, you know what? You're being too picky. Hurry up and get married. Make babies. Do something. Right?
Yeah, because they already settled.
Right, exactly. And then not only do we settle for a woman we don't even find sexually attractive enough, if at all, she's a total bitch to us. She's not nice. She shows signs of psychoses because we have bought into this storyline that all women are awful, all women are crazy, all of them are gold diggers, all of them are solipsistic, the whole men going their own way routine. And so we say, well, I don't want to be alone for the rest of my life, so life's a bitch, then you marry one. Saying you've heard before, which is supposed to be a joke. But for most men, it's no joke. So we paint ourselves out to be martyrs, like we're supposed to marry the wrong woman who's not very good to us. And then we wonder why the divorce rate's so high. Because I'll tell you what, if you would have let that poor woman find a guy who appreciated her, there probably is a guy out there who would appreciate her more than you ever could. Meanwhile, she doesn't have the chance, and you've robbed yourself of the chance to find a woman you're really attracted to. And here's how I'm going to punctuate this whole rant, okay? Gentlemen, if you are attracted to her and you say to yourself, man, she would be perfect for me, she and I would get along so wonderfully, why would she think otherwise? I mean, if you're right about that and you two would get along wonderfully and you're wonderful for each other and would even look cute together, why is she automatically going to disagree? That's your lack of self-esteem talking, Absolutely.
I mean, the thing is with life in general, and especially with what we're talking about now with relationships and women, pressure equals opportunity. So, I mean, like, your ability to deal with that pressure basically determines the level of success that you can have in these areas of life. So, for example, a lot of guys are professional athletes and then they play in the Super Bowl and they throw up beforehand because it's a new level of pressure for them. Or like the pop stars who perform at the Super Bowl halftime show. I've watched some behind the scenes documentaries. They get sick physically before they go on stage and then they kill it. So the way you feel before you approach that woman has nothing to do with how it's possibly going to go. And it means that that's an opportunity for you to get something, not something that you should avoid. And we should train ourselves to go into that fear instead of avoiding it, because that's where all the good stuff in life is. Every single thing that we want to have in life that makes us happy or satisfied with life is behind that wall of fear. Now, fear is a good thing if you're running and you don't want to jump off the cliff. We should avoid that. But if it's a psychological fear where your ego might get destroyed, that's good. You should destroy your ego. Take that chance and see what happens. You might be the Buffalo Bills and never win the Super Bowl and make it 4 times. That's still fine. It's better to play in it than never play in it and not see what happens. And then you don't have regrets when you're 90 years old, like you were talking about, Scott.
You know, the first time I ever was on a terrestrial radio interview where the show was nationally syndicated, all kinds of fears ran through my mind. Like, oh man, what if I get a temporary case of Tourette's syndrome and start dropping F-bombs on radio? You know, what if I just draw a blank and I can't even remember my name? And all of these fears. And yet I assured myself that I am a public speaker. I know my content inside out, and all I have to do is talk to the host about the subject matter that I know best, and it'll be all right, because it should be all right. And indeed, the host took me off mute, asked me a question, and it went great. And they invited me back. The next thing you know, Clear Channel Communications calls me up out of the blue and says, "Hey, Scott, can I put you on the air in 20 seconds to answer this question?" And I'm like, "Sure, let's have at it." And I hear the second half of the question, and I'm expected to throw down 30 seconds of content. Then he hangs up on me. I do it routinely now because now I've had so much experience at it that I'm not afraid of it anymore. But I'll tell you what, one of my friends recently got the chance to be on one of the late night talk shows as a guest. And I was thinking to myself, man, this guy got on there and crushed it for the first time. Would I be able to do that too? That would be a new level for me of being, physically ill beforehand. But, I mentioned it to my wife and she said, no, you'd go out there and crush it. You'd be fine because you would just go into what you know and you would put all that aside. But yeah, even people who are at top level, who are world champions, I like to talk about the interview that Derek Jeter did years ago when he was toward the end of his career and the Yankees had made the playoffs. And the reporter asked him, "Derek, do you still get butterflies in these big games when you get up to the plate?" And he goes, "Man, if I don't get butterflies when I'm at the plate and an at-bat in the World Series, you better check my pulse." Of course I do. Because it's exciting, And I think that's how we should feel when we see a woman who stops us in our tracks. We should be energetic and hopeful and feel into those butterflies because after all, Jim, the deal here is men are supposed to be courageous, not wimpy. And courage is simply feeling the fear and rising up to the challenge. It isn't being fearless. That's something completely different. So I'm with you 100% on that.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's actually, it's not really even necessarily fear. It's just potential energy that you can use to help you or it can hurt you. And on the other hand, on the other side of this, I just want to also say that this doesn't have to be the most attractive woman in the world that you approach. She just has to be good looking enough to you. And if that's the case, and she's a good woman who treats you well, she's going to get prettier over time. It's amazing how that works. If a woman is good to you, she has a good attitude, you laugh and have fun with her, over time, she's going to get prettier. And if she's not nice to you and she takes advantage of you, and she's going to get uglier over time, even if she's the hottest woman in the world.
Yeah. For every woman you think is hot, there's a guy who doesn't want to put up with her crap anymore. That's the first 100%, thing. Yeah. But I want to underscore the point you made with this concept on top of it. What you're talking about is not metaphorical. It's not a psychological trick. It's not like you meet this woman and she seems okay to you, but because you fell in love with her or something, all of a sudden she's more beautiful to you. It's objectively true. And I've talked to my guys about this before. It's been a while, so it's worth repeating now. When you meet a woman, your expectations for her are leadership. She will respond to your expectations. So if you think she's an evil, ugly bitch and you tell her so, you watch before your very eyes as she loses physical attractiveness, objectively, and turns into an uglier person inside and out. Meanwhile, if you tell your woman how beautiful you think she is, if you tell her how wonderful she is, her entire spirit brightens, her skin starts glowing, her smile is a little brighter. Don't think your brain is playing tricks on you when she is physically more beautiful because you led her into that state. It's almost magical, but it is really a thing, objectively, for sure.
100%. It's amazing how it actually works. And also, on the other hand, like you said, they become literally less attractive to you. You're not attracted to them anymore. And I'm sure we all have exes that we thought were good looking when we met them, and now we're not attracted to them at all.
Yes, right. One thing that goes along with that I think is worth talking about here, and I'd love to hear your take on this one too, Jim, is a lot of us as guys start dating women because we think that's who society wants us to date.
Mm-hmm.
I need to have a 5'10" supermodel, because if I don't, then everybody's going to think my wife isn't good enough or isn't attractive. Most guys really should settle down, get off of that high horse, and go after a woman who is their 10, who is their type. Because
that's right.
Everybody's going to understand you did well for yourself. They're going to understand the two of you adore each other. And if they're haters or if they have a complaint, so be it. My wife is a cutie. She's a little petite cutie. She's also a woman who looks particularly good with short hair. Most guys prefer long hair. For most men, cute doesn't equal beautiful. It's like, okay, she's nice, she's kind of cute, but I want someone who looks a little more like a Disney princess, personally. Well, do you really? I mean, do you really want a woman that's skinny? Do you really actually prefer a woman with more meat on her bones than you'd like to admit out loud? We as guys should get over ourselves and go find the woman who's right for us, because when we tell her she's beautiful, that's going to inspire confidence in her and build her self-esteem, because she's going to actually believe it. And nothing makes a woman feel safer in your presence than feeling legitimately chosen. And that just improves the relationship, and that makes her trust you more, like you more, feel more comfortable in the relationship, and all sorts of good long-term ramifications come from that, right, Jim?
Well, yeah. And at the end of the day, you're the one who has to come home to her every day. And I think that's a lot more important than what society is thinking at any given moment.
Right. Society isn't coming home to her at night.
That's right.
Yes.
They're not in your house with you. She is, and she can make your life good or miserable.
Yes, absolutely. So what are your secrets for guys, Jim? You're in a relationship like I am. What are some objective things we can do once we're in a relationship with a woman to make sure we're in it for the long term and happy to be there? I know you've touched on some already. Maybe to seed this conversation, a lot of guys really fear the word friends when juxtaposed with any kind of attraction or seduction or dating, because we've heard the term just be friends so many times. But it isn't the word friends that's the problem. It's the word just, isn't it?
Scott, that's a very important distinction. The word friend is very charged when it comes to male-female dynamics, because obviously we don't want to be in the friend zone, like you said. We don't want to just be friends. Here's the key. It depends on what her interest level is in you. If you did everything right in the attraction phase already, and her interest has risen to 9 out of 10 or higher on the female interest level scale, and she's actually deeply in love with you, she respects you, she looks up to you a little bit, she'll do anything for you because she has that genuine deep feeling of love inside of her, which is pretty rare, by the way. Most married women don't have that. They're maybe at a 6 or an 8 or whatever out of 10 or less a lot of times. And so if she's actually deeply in love with you, she will say, he's my best friend. That's a different role than, oh, you're just my friend, or you're kind of her male girlfriend. That's what I was going to talk about. Is there's a couple of other really important points about how to preserve these feelings of attraction and love over a long period of time and not get tired of someone, etc. And the first one is just make sure she's actually genuinely interested in you as well from the beginning. And then make sure you raise her interest in the beginning stages of dating until she is actually deeply in love with you. And then you can kind of relax on that stuff a little bit and shift into the maintenance mode where you just keep her interest level high. And that's hopefully when you guys do become best friends who do work together as a team. And there's a couple of really important things about being her best friend, I guess, or just kind of being in that long-term relationship and being satisfied with it, which is you need to have a protective buffer around your relationship that allows it to survive and thrive, because the world is going to throw all kinds of stuff at you. There was a pandemic recently. There's going to be stressful situations with your job probably, or she'll have something. You're going to have people passing away in your family or hers. You're going to have things to deal with in life that are not so pleasant. And what you need to do is have a protective buffer around your relationship that protects it and doesn't allow you to build up resentment towards her. So you need to prevent building up resentment towards each other. And there's a lot of ways that you can do that. And one of the first most important ways that you can kind of preserve those positive feelings towards each other over a long period of time is to continue dating your wife or your girlfriend. So it's not like, oh, we're going to go on dates for 3 months and now she's in love and now we're together and I'm going to sit on the couch now every day and not take her out. If you want to maintain her natural feelings for you, it takes work. You can't start taking her for granted and then just think like, oh, the love is gone now. The love didn't just disappear on its own. You stopped treating her that way, and now her love went down, assuming she had some in the first place.
Well, hold on just a second.
Yeah.
What's the difference between maintenance mode and taking her for granted?
Well, I mean, they're two sides of the same coin, right? It's just another way to say it, basically. But the maintenance program that I'm talking about is very specific because I teach it. But yeah, I mean, it's basically, like working with her as a team, continuing to date her, continuing to work on yourself as a man. You don't just like work on yourself and now I have this woman and I'm stopping now. Keep working out, keep growing, keep reading stuff, keep doing personal growth. Don't stop. If you keep improving yourself over time, she's never going to fall out of love with you because you're a better guy than yesterday and she already loved you. As long as you treat her well and she treats you well and you respect each other. So I think a lot of people just kind of think like, my goal is that wedding day. After that, we're going to drop off the cliff. And It's like, no, you need to have a lifestyle that is building that protective buffer around your relationship. And then magically, the love doesn't fall off. Of course, those chemicals that we get in the first few months are going to go away. Those first 2 years are a little more magical, I guess, for any human. That's how we experience it. But if you still like spending time with a woman after that period has passed and you're still attracted to her and she feels the same way about you, you can keep that going for as long as you want to be with her, as long as you follow this maintenance program, which again is the main thing about it is to avoid the resentment that you start building up towards each other.
It's amazing how many couples don't even think about the future when they decide to get married. They're living in the moment. Let's have a big wedding. I feel the biological clock ticking. I want to make a baby. You're here. You're available. You're the first woman who showed up and would accept me or put up with me. All these things we say out loud in public to our friends and our acquaintances that just denigrate the status of our relationship, like calling our wives our ball and chain or calling her the boss and, this, that, and the other. It's really just open disrespect. And one of the things you said at the beginning reminded me of my buddy Doc Love, God rest his soul. He passed away about 1.5 years ago, who had been a dating coach since 1964. And he harped on it constantly. If you listen to his radio show or even, his podcasts and interviews I did with him, interest level, interest level, interest level. How high is her interest level? And it's easy to say, well, dude, you got to tell me how to increase her interest level, not just measure it. Right. And that may have been a little bit of a gap in his work because he just harped on it all the time, measure that interest level. But, some women are going to like you and they're going to gravitate to you and some women aren't. And there are certain women out there, no matter how well you seduce her, it doesn't matter how many things you do right, she's still going to roll her eyes and not like you. And a lot of guys feel rejected by that and they let their mojo get damaged. Meanwhile, there's certain women out there who you can screw up almost everything and they still find you adorable and follow you around like a little puppy. And weirdly, I figured out it has almost nothing to do with how hot or attractive she is. It has to do with how well you're ultimately going to get along. I mean, there are certain women out there who are gorgeous and they drive me nuts. I couldn't even imagine a 20-minute date with them, let alone being with them for 20 years. Other women, I meet them and I feel like I've known them for 10 years, 10 minutes into the date. That's what we're talking about here. I think another important thing is you have to learn how to speak womanese because that's what women are talking about when they say, I want to find my soulmate. A soulmate in a woman's mind is a man who not only makes her feel all the right things in terms of attraction and safety and security, he's just someone they like, someone who gets along with them. So all of that you're talking about is just so mission critical. If I like this person and want to spend time with them, it's going to be a lot easier to do so over the long term. I mean, hello, right? But a lot of people, they don't think even one chess move ahead into the future. They just think about, okay, I need a wedding, or she's hot and I'll figure out how to put up with all this and hope she doesn't turn into a crazy, cheating, lying, horrible person later. And that's just immature. So I know one of the things you talk about is dating a while before you get married. You know, you're definitely not a guy who wants to elope to Vegas with the first woman he meets and get married when you both are drunk. But a lot of guys are also like, well, I mean, how long do I have to get to know this person? Do I need to really date her for 4 or 5 years or something like that? So I want you to talk about the happy medium. And what I'm going to say to kind of start things off is, if you are with a woman for like 2 years or more and you haven't even figured her out yet and probably don't even trust her, you can't take the water under the bridge mentality and say, well, if I broke up with her, I'd have to start all over again. You have to chalk it up. Realize you spent some nice time with her, but she probably isn't your woman if you're still not feeling attraction and security and all you're feeling is pressure. So there's plenty to talk about there. Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, what I teach guys is 2 years is basically the minimum. So it doesn't mean you can't get engaged after a year and a half. It's just don't sign that marriage contract until at least 2 years have passed. And the reason for that is, when you first meet someone, you're going to have all kinds of emotions and chemicals and stuff flowing through your body, and it clouds your judgment. However, after you spend 2 years with someone, you're going to see patterns of her behavior over time. You're going to be able to realize if it's something you can accept or not, the way that she is in her lifestyle. And what you have to really ask yourself is, if she never changes and she's always the way she is right now, would you want to be with her? And if yes, then she's a good choice for you. And if not, then you should move on. And it might be hard, but it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse over time. And so I think a lot of people think, oh, things will change. The marriage will make us closer. These problems will go away if we get married or we have kids or whatever, but it actually just compounds those issues that you're already having or those things you already don't like. So don't delude yourself. If you can accept the way she is exactly right now, then great. And if not, it's time to move on for both of you. And the other thing I want to say about that is, when you're first dating a woman, it's not like it always takes 2 years to filter a woman out. You know, you should not ignore red flags on the first date. A lot of women, surprisingly enough to a lot of guys, will literally tell you a lot of their flaws that disqualify them on the first date. And you just ignored it because you were attracted to them. So kind of start looking for those red flags of, is this person hard-headed and stubborn? Are they agreeable? Are they a taker or a giver? Are they, like you said in your masterclass that I listened to the other day, which is great, by the way, are they financially responsible or not? You know, like, you're going to start looking for the qualities that you need immediately. It's just, it takes a little while for those chemicals to calm down and for you to have a clear, rational picture of who that person is. And then you can make a good decision. And the last thing I want to say about that is, the most important thing beyond attraction is, in a general sense, everything that we just said could be summed up in just, how does she treat you? It's so simple, but like, does she treat you like a teammate? Does she treat you like an enemy? How does she treat you? Do you feel good when you spend time with her? Does she make your life better? Is she able to carry some of life's weight with you, or is she something you also have to carry? Those are the things you have to ask yourself.
I think all of that is tremendous advice. And I think that's where we drop the mic too. I think that's a great place from which we can send guys to your website, Jim. And I'm going to point you guys to Jim Wolfe's website by going to mountaintoppodcast.com/Wolfe with an E, WOLFE. The name of what you're going to find there is the Attractor and Keeper system. And Jim, tell these guys kind of the elevator pitch about that system.
Yeah, so inside the Attract and Keeper system, we go over exactly what to do from the first moment that you meet a woman that you're attracted to. And now you're going to approach her, of course, because we talked about that. And then what to do exactly during those first 2 to 3 months when you're just kind of raising her interest level and you're in that attraction and initial dating phase. And then we talked about the maintenance mode in this podcast. We go over exactly what to do in that maintenance mode to make sure that she stays in love with you and that you can build a great relationship with her as long as you want to be with her. So if you want to know all the details about how to apply everything that we talked about here and more, then definitely check out the Attract and Keep Her system today. It's almost 20 years of research put into that. So very proud of it. And I think it'll be helpful to you.
Fantastic. Yeah. Go to mountaintoppodcast.com/Wolfe, WOLFE, and get you some, guys. Jim Wolfe from all the way over in Armenia. Thank you so much for coming back. What a great conversation, man. I appreciate you.
It's always great talking to you, Scott. Thanks again for having me on, man.
Yeah, for sure. And gentlemen, if you haven't been to mountaintoppodcast.com lately, we've revamped the site. You can get a copy of my free book, Sticking Points Solved, in which you'll find real answers to real questions contributed by real guys all over the world that cover just about every sticking point you can think of when it comes to women in relationships. It's yours free. As always, you can also get on the phone, talk to me free for 25 minutes about where you are right now in your life attracting women. Are you trying to find the right woman to be in a relationship with and you want to talk more about that? Hey, I'm exactly who you think I'm going to be. Click the red button at the top of the page at mountaintoppodcast.com and let's visit about perhaps putting a plan of action together with you for you to make this happen in your life and get results. All that and more is there for you, as always, at mountaintoppodcast.com. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.